I'm Shawn, and this is your Art Moments for today. The French painter of the late 19th century, Henri Rousseau, was known as a storyteller, both in his paintings and in real life. Most of his friends and family knew that he could spin a tall tale, exaggerating and often downright fabricating his stories to make himself sound more mysterious, well-traveled, and well-read than he actually was. It was this ability that led from him going from a tax agent to a renowned artist in a short amount of time. So I guess the storytelling worked for him. Henri Rousseau was born in Laval, France in 1844. Laval is a typical medieval French town with defensive walls and gates, typically with guard towers. It was one of these gates, the Bolcheries Gate, that Henri's parents lived and operated an ironmonger's business. This is where Henri spent his formative years alongside his father, doing repairs on things such as teacups, tea kettles, ladles, buckets. It was something that he was expected to carry on in the family business. Henri Rousseau spent a lifetime known as someone who was not able to manage his finances very well. But it was in his early 20s, while working as a shop clerk, that he was accused and convicted of stealing stamps and other miscellaneous items from a shop he was working in. Henri was sentenced to a year in prison, but opted to serve the time in the military. Unfortunately, through a paperwork slip-up, Henri ended up spending a month in prison before he went into the service. It's believed that this time in prison, connected with the people that he met, did kind of help form some of his later stories in his artwork. Known as the naive or primitive style of painting, Rousseau's creations embody a whimsical and childlike quality to them, which is usually indicative of someone who has no formal training. In fact, in later years, Rousseau used to brag that he didn't pick up a paintbrush until his mid-40s. In 1885, Rousseau exhibited his first works at the Salon de Refusé in Paris. This was an annual event in which paintings and works of art that had been rejected throughout the previous year were showcased in the main salon. Many of Rousseau's works had been rejected due to technical issues, such as things being too large, or out of place, or not quite right. But it was this whimsical style in between the post-impressionist and the pre-modern period when Rousseau's works found the biggest audience. It is in one of Rousseau's earliest acclaimed paintings, titled Surprised, finished in 1891, in which Rousseau's talent for storytelling actually shows through. Rousseau claimed that the painting was inspired from his time in the Mexican jungle while serving in the French military. However, records show that Rousseau never left France during his time serving in the French army. It is the cat in the painting in which Rousseau's primitive style of painting shows through the most. Whereas the cat should be on the ground standing in the grass, the cat is actually hovering above the grass. Not to mention that Rousseau claimed for this to be a tiger, when in fact there are no tigers anywhere in North America or Mexico. It's in another notable painting by Rousseau, titled The Old Junior's Cart, completed in 1901, in which Rousseau's inability to manage his finances actually comes to light. It's said that Rousseau owed a local butcher a great sum of money in which he couldn't pay. So Rousseau offered to create a painting of the butcher and his family in lieu of the debt. It's said that the butcher was reluctant at first, but eventually agreed to the deal based on the urging of his wife, who wanted a painting of the family. Most people who view this painting can see the technical difficulties that Rousseau had with this creation. As you can see, the figures are all out of proportion and scale with each other, and there's just something a little bit off about the background and the cart. It's said that when Rousseau delivered this painting to the butcher asked, "Well, who is this driving the cart?" And Rousseau's response was, "Well, it's me, of course." The butcher asked, "Why would you have yourself driving the cart with me and my family?" And Rousseau's response was, "Well, because I'm a notable artist, of course." It's my belief that Rousseau actually recycled a previous painting for this creation in order to pay the butcher for the debt that he owed. In 1888, Henri Rousseau lost his beloved wife Clemence to tuberculosis at the age of 38. In his painting Promenade in the Forest of Saint-Germain, it's believed that Rousseau represented his pain and despair of losing his wife of 20 years by painting her in a three-quarter turn as if to say goodbye. Additionally, the branch above the subject in the painting, which has been cut off, is known to represent death in that time period. In 1908, the up-and-coming 27-year-old artist by the name of Pablo Picasso invited Rousseau to his Parisian studio, La Bataille Lavoie, where he intended to present Rousseau with a special commendation. The two had met a couple years earlier, and although there was plenty of artistic rivalry, there was a special bond between the two on their rather laissez-faire outlook on life and a mutual sense of humor. When Rousseau arrived at the studio, he realized that there were several of Picasso's friends around, and sensing that there might be some humor involved, he kind of prepared himself. When Picasso came around the corner, he had a medal the size of a hubcap made out of cardboard in which he had written "The World's Greatest Artist." And just as Picasso went to put the medal around Rousseau's neck, Rousseau reached out to Picasso and said, "We are the world's two greatest artists. You paint in the old world style, and I paint in the modern style." It was a way of Rousseau taking back the moment and adding humor to the situation. Although Rousseau found his passion in life with painting, as well as a measurable amount of fame, it was the fortune that always seemed to elude him. Rousseau passed away in 1910 at the Necker Hospital in Paris at the age of 66. There were only 7 people in attendance at his funeral, where he was buried in a pauper's grave with no headstone. 2 years later, his friend Pablo Picasso received word of Rousseau's passing and being buried in a pauper's grave, and decided that this was not good enough for his friend. So he had the burial moved to the Cemetery de Bagneux in Paris, where Picasso paid for a headstone engraved with a poem from their mutual friend Apollinaire. In 1947, Rousseau was honored by having his gravesite moved to his birthplace of Laval, France, where it was given a special place of honor in the Jardin de la Perrine in central Laval. His gravesite can be seen there today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Art Moments with Shawn, where we've taken a look at the life and works of Henri Rousseau. We'll come back again with another episode very soon. Until then, thanks for watching.